This is Philip Hundl. I'm an attorney with Wadler, Perches, Hundl, and Kerlick. And this segment will be, I'll call it part 3 of our discussion on condemnation, eminent domain, and the landowner's rights in those proceedings. A question is also often brought up, or I'm often asked a question about whether a landowner, if they're agreeable to, let's say, the monetary compensation or the amount of money that the power line company is willing to pay them for an easement over their property. That's, let's say, the first hurdle. But then the second hurdle oftentimes is exactly what this easement agreement says. And landowners possibly could believe that, well, this is, the language in the easement is take it or leave it, or I have to accept every provision in the easement agreement that's proposed by the power line company. And that, I'm going to say, in my experience, is typically not the case. These companies are typically willing to negotiate and work with you on the non-monetary provisions of the easement agreement, as well as the monetary provisions. Some of the areas that I say are topics of discussion and negotiation can be the size of the easement agreement, or the size of the easement, the area that's going to be subject to the easement. With further discussions with the pipeline company or the power line company, instead of wanting a 75-foot easement, maybe they can accomplish what they want to accomplish with a 60-foot easement, and that may make a difference for you, the landowner. Also, there are times when these companies are seeking access or road use to get to their pipeline easement or power line easement that may run through the middle of your property or on the far end of your property. And they're also seeking, in addition to the pipeline easement or power line easement, a access or road use easement. And that could be, and that can be open for discussion. It can be a temporary access, permanent access. It can be limited in a lot of different ways. Also, once the work is complete on your property, there can be provisions that can be more detailed or less detailed to remediate the land and bring it back to its previous condition. So before the work was done on the pipeline easement, getting the pipeline company to agree to bring the property or the land back to its original condition can be something that can be discussed and outlined in an easement agreement. So all those terms and conditions can be discussed, negotiated, and in my experience, pipeline companies and power line companies are typically open to doing that. There's other provisions too. Oftentimes the route of the access roads that these companies are wanting, or the actual route of the pipeline or power line, may be able to be rerouted or diverted somewhat, depending on the particular attributes of your property. If there are particular trees or groups of trees that you would like to be avoided by the pipeline or power line, that's possible. And so those are discussions that need to be had with the private company, with the pipeline company, that are typically more easily done by the lawyer. Also, if there's improvements on the property or ponds or things like that, those can be also avoided oftentimes by the pipeline company or power line company. Also, depending on what activity you're currently using the property for, let's say you're running cattle on the property, well, it's going to be very important to you that your cattle are not injured while the pipeline company or power line company is out there on your property doing this construction, or even doing the surveying, that they don't leave the gate open. So those are all items that need to be discussed and can be agreed upon. There can be temporary fencing put in place. You all can agree or discuss what type of temporary fencing. So lots of thought can go into those details, and in my experience, companies are willing to discuss those details. Also, sometimes there's some confusion by landowners of who they're dealing with. Many of these pipeline companies or power line companies or governmental entities will hire agents to do, and they're often called landmen or land acquiring companies, but they do a lot of this quote unquote work, boots on the ground, work on the ground with the landowner. And so you may be dealing with a company that's not XYZ pipeline company, but it's some other company that you can think of it as a subcontractor for the pipeline company, and their job is to go and meet with landowners to work out these details. And so sometimes there's a little confusion of who actually is doing the negotiating for the pipeline company, and those are good questions to ask to clarify. Who are you, and how do you fit into this process? What is your role? And so that will help sometimes with the discussions. And certain levels of subcontractors only have certain authority to make certain decisions. So that's also important to find out who actually has the authority to make certain decisions. Hopefully that's helpful.